What if the crypto market has been looking at XRP completely the wrong way? Because while most people have been focused on price charts, meme coins, and short term volatility, Ripple has been quietly moving deeper and deeper into the financial system itself. And honestly, after the response to my recent XLM video, I started digging further into the DTCC announcements, Ripple Prime, RLUSD, tokenization, and institutional infrastructure. And I think most people are misunderstanding what's actually happening here. Because the XRP story and the XLM story are not the same story. In fact, I think they reveal something much bigger about where crypto adoption is actually heading next. Now, if you watched my previous XLM video, you'll remember we spoke about how Stellar became connected to a DTCC linked tokenization initiative. And naturally, that got the crypto market excited because the DTCC is one of the most important pieces of financial infrastructure in the world. They clear and settle securities transactions across global markets and process an unbelievable amount of value every year. So, the second crypto projects start appearing anywhere near that kind of infrastructure, people instantly jump to this is it. Wall Street is moving onto blockchain. But the deeper I look into this story, the more I realise the XRP angle may actually be even more interesting long term. Because with Stellar, the excitement is about blockchain integration. Stellar appears connected to tokenization infrastructure linked to the DTCC ecosystem itself. But with Ripple, the story is different. Ripple Prime joined the DTCC participant ecosystem as a clearing and executing broker participant. Now, at first glance, that might not sound as exciting as XRP Ledger officially chosen by Wall Street. But I think this may tell us far more about what Ripple is actually becoming, because this isn't Ripple's first connection to institutional finance. For years, Ripple's been building payment and liquidity infrastructure specifically designed for banks, financial institutions, and cross border settlement. RippleNet was built to connect institutions globally through Ripple's payment network. Their on demand liquidity system was designed around the idea of moving value across borders more efficiently without institutions needing huge amounts of capital sitting idle in pre funded accounts around the world. And while most of crypto spent years focused on speculation cycles, Ripple kept moving deeper into payments, liquidity infrastructure, compliance, and institutional relationships. That's important because for years, critics argued Ripple was too connected to traditional finance. But what if that was actually the point? Because when you look at how institutions actually operate, Ripple's strategy suddenly starts making far more sense. Banks don't move quickly, institutions don't like volatility, governments don't want financial chaos, and Wall Street does not want to rebuild the entire financial system from scratch overnight. It wants efficiency, faster settlement, reduced friction, programmable liquidity, cross border interoperability, tokenized collateral. But it also wants regulation, compliance, and controlled integration. And that is exactly where Ripple seems to thrive. Even during one of the biggest SEC battles in crypto history, Ripple kept building. Not memes, not hype cycles, actual infrastructure, licenses, institutional products, liquidity services, custody expansion, settlement tools, prime brokerage access, stablecoin infrastructure. And when you start stacking all the recent developments together, the picture becomes really interesting. You've got Ripple expanding further into institutional custody. You've got RLUSD entering the stablecoin conversation. At exactly the same time, institutions are becoming increasingly interested in tokenized liquidity and programmable dollars. You've got growing conversations around tokenized assets, settlement systems, and interoperability. And now you've got Ripple positioning itself closer to the plumbing of traditional finance itself through DTCC participation. And honestly, I think this is where the XRP community may actually understand something the wider market still misses. Because let's be honest, this is also why XRP creates so much debate inside crypto. For years, XRP holders have watched Ripple continue expanding into payments, liquidity, custody, institutional infrastructure, and now stablecoins, while the price action often failed to reflect the scale of those developments. And that frustration matters because the market keeps asking, if Ripple is building all of this, why hasn't XRP already exploded in price? But I think that question reveals something important about how markets work. Financial infrastructure is not a meme coin narrative, it develops slowly. Institutional adoption happens in layers, regulation takes time, liquidity systems take time, settlement infrastructure takes time, and most markets tend to price hype faster than infrastructure. That's why meme coins can move overnight, while infrastructure plays often develop quietly for years before the market fully understands what's being built underneath the surface. And I think that's why so many XRP holders remain convinced despite years of frustration. Because from their perspective, Ripple keeps moving closer to the future financial system itself, while the market still values XRP largely like a speculative altcoin. Now, does that guarantee massive future price appreciation? No. And it's important to stay balanced here because Ripple, the company, and XRP, the asset, are not identical things. But if blockchain infrastructure, tokenized liquidity, and institutional settlement systems continue growing globally, then eventually the market may need to decide whether XRP is being valued correctly at all. Because crypto investors still tend to think adoption means disruption. They imagine a future where banks disappear overnight and everything suddenly moves fully onto blockchain rails all at once. But the deeper you study financial systems, the less realistic that looks. The existing system is deeply embedded into the global economy. Governments rely on it, institutions rely on it, liquidity relies on it. So the more likely path is integration, a gradual transition where blockchain technology gets layered into the existing system piece by piece. And that is why I think Ripple's positioning matters so much. Because Ripple increasingly looks less like a traditional crypto project and more like a company building infrastructure for this hybrid financial future. And I think RLUSD could become one of the most important parts of this entire strategy because stablecoins solve one of the biggest institutional problems in crypto: volatility. Traditional finance doesn't want to move trillions of dollars entirely through highly volatile assets. But tokenized dollars, programmable liquidity, digital settlement assets, that becomes much easier for institutions to adopt. And suddenly, Ripple no longer looks like just XRP. It starts looking like a company positioning itself across multiple layers of digital finance simultaneously: cross border payments, institutional liquidity, stablecoins, custody, settlement infrastructure, prime brokerage access. And this is why I think the DTCC development matters. Not because XRP Ledger officially replaces Wall Street tomorrow, but because Ripple keeps embedding itself deeper into the infrastructure layer underneath the financial system itself. And I think that's a much more believable path for adoption than the narratives crypto social media often pushes. Because real institutional adoption probably won't arrive through one giant announcement. It will happen slowly, quietly, through infrastructure, through interoperability, through liquidity systems, through tokenized assets, through stablecoins, through regulated integration. And the projects that benefit most may not necessarily be the loudest communities online, but the ones that position themselves closest to the system years ago. That's why I don't think these recent developments should be viewed as which coin pumps harder. I think they're showing us that traditional finance is no longer ignoring blockchain technology. it's experimenting with it carefully. And Ripple increasingly looks determined to make sure it sits directly inside that transition. Now, personally, I don't think the future becomes one blockchain dominating everything. I think it becomes a hybrid financial system. Multiple chains, multiple liquidity layers, stablecoins, interoperability, tokenized assets moving between networks. But if that's true, then the projects positioned closest to regulation, institutional liquidity, and financial infrastructure could become some of the biggest long term winners of the entire industry. And whether people love XRP or hate it, Ripple is undeniably positioning itself for that future. Now, before we finish, I genuinely want to hear from the XRP community on this one. Do you think the market is still massively underestimating what Ripple is building? Or do you think people are reading too much into these institutional developments? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know which project or macro story you want me to deep dive next. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.